Welcome everyone to our 2021 to 2022, I'm blowing it already, kickoff of the Foreign Speaker Series. I am Laura Dorn. I have the opportunity to serve as president of the Salem Chamber Board of Directors this year, and I am excited. Hard to tell with a mask, but I am really excited about this year. Thank you to PGE for helping us to make today's important program possible. What a unique time we are in. As I reflect on the challenges we face as a community, as a state, as a nation, I am brought back humbly to the tragedy and heroics we witnessed 20 years ago this past weekend. The events of 9/11 forever changed our nation, as we have had an unprecedented attack on U.S. soil, threatening the beliefs of freedom, democracy, and capitalism. 2,977 lives were lost on September 11th, 2001. As a nation watched in horror, heroes immediately mobilized to assist fellow Americans at the World Trade Center towers, the Pentagon, and the intended flight targeting the U.S. Capitol landing in Pennsylvania. The bravery of our men and women serving as first responders, police and fire, and the United States military is unparalleled. As we reflect on where we each were individually on the morning of September 11th, 2001, I would ask you to join me in a moment of silence to remember those lost lives. We will never forget you. Thank you all. Last weekend, our community lost a tremendous leader in our education community. Today, we reflect on the life of Chuck Lee, founder of Blanchette Catholic School, leader at Salem Kaiser School District's Career Technical Education Center, better known as CTEC, and the team member with Mountain West Investment Corporation. Chuck, you are an incredibly gifted champion for education and students. Our organization and this community sends our heartfelt prayers and thoughts to Chuck's wife, Karina, as well as the whole Lee family. Please join me in welcoming Brent DeHart, former Salem Chamber past president, representing Salem Aviation and Fuel, as well as chairman for Fly Salem Committee. Brent will provide our national anthem, invocation for today's forum luncheon. Brent is joined today by his son, Lieutenant Alec DeHart, U.S. Marine Corps. Nice to see you, Alec.
Thank you, Laura. It's great to see you up here. Please stand. Tom, I'm not sure which makes me more nervous, you asking me to sing or asking me to pray, but I'll do my best for both. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we'd watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. And as we gather 2 days from marking our 20th anniversary of the attack on America, and also in recent memory of the loss of 13 sons and daughters in service to America, we stop to reflect and pray for our nation, our populace that's united under our Constitution, and our fractured culture. Let us pray. Dear God, we first give you thanks for all of creation and our very lives to experience with all those who bring value to our world. We thank you for being in a free country, in a beautiful state, in a remarkable community full of servants. We thank you for the inspiration and example that you have set for us. Today, we especially give thanks for those who serve for our protection, from municipal public safety professionals to our armed services in the past, present, and future. We mourn the innocent lost, and those lost trying to save them 20 years ago. God, we ask for your forgiveness for our shortcomings, not in the least of which the many of my own, and for the times that we all fall short of our potential and falling short of the high expectation that we should strive to meet. Lord, please give us wisdom, patience, and understanding as we debate public policy in our nation and in our community. Help us unite and not divide. Help us learn from one another and not attack. And help us survive this pandemic with our families and society intact until answers are provided and we overcome the evil. We thank you for our speaker today. We thank you for this freedom, for our civil, public gathering and discourse we enjoy today. And I hope and pray that this is never taken for granted. Please bless this food in your name, and may it nourish us to stay strong in your service. Amen.
Thank you, Brent. Well done. You're extremely talented and have spent countless hours to assist Salem in reacquiring commercial air service. Please follow Brent's work at Fly Salem Committee at flysle.com. I would like to now introduce our head table. We have Director Colt Gill, our keynote speaker, and serves as leader of the Oregon Department of Education. Superintendent Christy Perry leads our Salem School District and Oregon's second largest, excuse me, I'm fogged up. Oregon's second largest school district. Salem-Keizer consists of over 40,000 students with 65 school locations and nearly 6,000 employees. We have Mark and Tiffany Bulgin represent the Ike Box Cafe in Isaacs downtown. You'll hear more about them and their wonderful work in the Salem community shortly. And Tom Hoffer serves as our CEO of the Salem Chamber and is truly our champion for Salem. I also want to recognize elected officials. Please stand to be recognized. President Osvaldo Avila, Representative Raquel Moore Green, hard for me to see where you are. Thank you for joining us. I would also like to recognize our past presidents. We have several of them in attendance today. Please stand to be recognized. Ken Junt, Brent DeHart, Kathy Gordon, and Ryan Albritton. Thanks for joining us. I also would like to recognize my fellow board members, board of directors for this year. Please stand to be recognized. Alan Rasmussen, Mike Herron, Kathy Gordon, Tom Yang, Rich Duncan, and Eric Templeton. Thanks for joining us. And lastly, I would like to recognize any students in attendance, including Student of the Month, students with MAPS Credit Union branches, and any students from our CTEC program. Please stand to be recognized. Of course, they're in school.
Probably not quite yet.
Not yet. All right. Despite the challenges of a global pandemic, each day we witness countless acts of courage and philanthropy. We find uplifting stories occurring throughout our community. And at the heart of many such efforts in Salem small business community, to set the stage for our Spirit of Salem Award, please welcome Tom Hoffer to the podium.
Well, thank you, President Dorn. It is a great pleasure to be here. And the fact that many of you are in person Although I know there are many watching, we have streams through Facebook and our YouTube page. You can expect to see this video reproduced by our talented young man right there, Emmanuel Goicoechea on our staff. Give him a round of applause. He is manning the now Capital Community Media, complimentary use for the public video recorder. Also, he works so well with our partners at Allied Video. So you can see this reproduction after the event. We as an organization recognize in-person events are not for all of our members. We are going to do our best to have a full slate of speakers throughout this coming year at our Forum Speaker Series luncheons, and our hope is that many of those are done right here in person. That is the intent, but of course we will follow governor mandates and making sure ultimately we keep our guests safe at all times. It is my pleasure today to talk about and introduce one of our staff members here at the Salem Chamber to present our Spirit of Salem Award. This unique award was started 2.5 years ago and continues to be a great way that we can recognize individuals who have an absolutely profound impact in the city of Salem. The individuals to my left, although they did not understand necessarily why they were coming today, are going to receive just that honor today, and I know you will all be very excited to congratulate them. At this point, I would like to welcome our Director of Business Advocacy, Zachary Zalicki, up to the stage so Zachary can introduce Mark and Tiffany Bulgin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Truly means a lot. Like Tom said, I'm Zachary Zalicki, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Business Advocacy. Tom alluded to this a little bit, but give you a little bit more information on the Spirit of Salem Award. Each month, our organization has the privilege and honor of bestowing the Spirit of Salem Award to one or more of Salem's most impactful leaders. Spirit of Salem Award recipients embody this is one of the words I was really working on. Etymological verb shalom, for which the word Salem is derived from, meaning to be or make whole or complete. Recipients are individuals or organizations who work tirelessly behind the scenes day in and day out to make Salem a special and inclusive place for everybody. This month, we are super excited to present Mark and Tiffany Bulgin with the Spirit of Salem Award. This October marks 23 years from when Mark and Tiffany welcomed their first son, Isaac, into the world. After a heroic 2-month battle with a rare heart condition, Isaac was then welcomed into heaven. This tragic loss sparked the creation of Isaac's Room. Isaac's Room is Mark and Tiffany's effort to extend the family love and support which they would have eagerly blessed Isaac with throughout his life to the youth in our community who have suffered from a shortage of that love in their own lives. Just as the room that Isaac was supposed to live in is physically empty and therefore available, the space they make in their lives for our community's youth is now available through Isaac's Room. For those of you who are not aware of what Isaac's Room is, it's a local nonprofit which operate both Ikebox and Isaac's in downtown Salem. These two coffee shops provide our youth with skill development and job training, which are critical components to the growth of Salem's disadvantaged youth. There are young people throughout our community, foster kids, alternative education students, juvenile clients, or maybe just a nameless sophomore in the crowded halls of one of our neighborhood schools, who get the impression that we have given up on them. They get that message in our language, in our systems, in the fact that we let them carry their things in garbage bags, and even down to the small things like the avoidance of eye contact. Mark and Tiffany believe that there are ways to inspire the uninspired youth. And Isaac's Room and the programs they have created are the way to break the cycle of faltering family resulting in faltering youth. Rather than write off these apparently shiftless youth as lost causes, they have chosen to invest. They bind up their own health and well-being to theirs, not because they see themselves as saints, but because this is reality. The health and well-being of our community is inextricably connected to justice and mercy for the young people among us and who think that we have given up on them. The impact which Isaac's Room has created for generations of kids has and will continue to shape the lives and fortunes of youth in our Salem for decades to come. Mark and Tiffany are truly the embodiment of shalom. Their efforts to make Salem whole and complete is second to none, and the Salem Chamber is honored to have the opportunity to recognize these two incredible leaders and their efforts to continuing to make Salem a remarkable community. Mark and Tiffany, thank you so much for your friendship, and thank you dearly for all that you do for Salem. You truly make Salem a better place because of your hearts. Now please step forward and receive your award. Yo, podium's all yours.
There's two of us. We have to decide who's going to talk.
You all should know better than surprising us and then asking us to share a few thoughts. Should know.
Yeah, we didn't know why we were asked to be here, but thank you, Zach, for that, and for you, for the chamber, for everybody. We really are committed to this town. We love it very much, and this community and the kids that live here. And thank you all for supporting our businesses out front and also behind the scenes. Many of you in this room have sponsored them from behind the scenes. To the point that we could even buy the Ike box during COVID. And now we own that building, and hopefully that shows that we are really committed to staying and providing places for more and more youth to find family extended and skills to help them give the confidence to live a productive life. Do you want to say anything else?
Well, it's just an honor to serve the town, to serve the community by giving these young people an opportunity to join us in serving the community. And one thing that we're thankful for and proud of is that Isaac's stayed open throughout the pandemic. The Ike box has been open as much as possible. Air quality in that 100-year-old building during the fires was pretty difficult. But the young people that we serve, to see the look in their eyes when they discover that they have the power to bring a brightness to somebody else's day, that's truly a life-changing moment and a life-changing experience for our kids. And so to have these places for the community and to have people like you visit and enjoy the space to be together gives our kids the opportunity to be the host to those spaces. And in that way, they become the hero of their story, and they become the hero of our Salem Shalom story. So thank you very much. This is a true honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Tiffany. Truly leaders in our community, and we are very grateful that you live and work and contribute to this community. So, due to company safety policies, our sponsoring company is not permitted to be in person with us today. And we will miss their presence, but still feel their support. Our partners at PGE have made today's forum kickoff event possible. Beyond reliable electricity, PGE has a deep investment in Salem community. From sponsoring local efforts to improve our climate initiatives, to presenting the Smart Grid Award at our SAIF Agribusiness Luncheon and Banquet, PGE stands for community. While they are unable to be physically present today, we appreciate Kimberly Howard-Wade, Program Officer at the PGE Foundation, in joining us virtually to speak about the company and to introduce today's keynote speaker. Can I draw your attention to the screens?
Good morning, everyone. Actually, I should say good afternoon. I'm Kimberly Howard-Wade. I'm with Portland General Electric's Community Impact Team. It takes all of us to solve our most pressing challenges and make sure our neighbors are taken care of. And that's why Portland General Electric is happy to sponsor this 2021-22 Forum Speaker Series kickoff with Colt Gill. We're a longtime partner with the Salem Chamber, as well as funding partners through the PGE Foundation with organizations like the Career Technical Education Center, Chemeketa Community College Foundation, and AC Gilbert House, to name a few. We've long been supporters of education, arts learning, and STEM education in particular, and it goes way back in your community and in all the areas where we serve our customers. We are supporting students in the whole P20 continuum because we believe that that leads to economic prosperity for families and for the region. And that's why myself and coworkers serve on several education boards and commissions, both for the state and for community-based organizations. Like Wendy Belize, who is a member of the Salem Chamber on behalf of PGE, who also serves on the board of Stand for Children. Or Ann Mercereau, our Vice President of Human Resources and Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, who serves on the Oregon Workforce Talent Development Board, and myself, who serves as the chair currently of the Oregon State Board of Education. As I mentioned earlier, PGE is a long-standing partner in the education space, mostly because we believe that workforce development is key to, again, as I said, our economic prosperity. But it's also key to having strong, thriving communities. At the center of it all is our students. And about 2 years ago, we heard our students say very loudly and very clearly that they wanted to know more about climate education, climate science, climate literacy, climate justice. They wanted to understand what their role was in finding solutions, designing solutions, problem solving, collaborating, and using teamwork and partnership to change turn the tide, if you will, of the climate emergency. And so PGE got together with community partners in the environmental space and also in the space of workforce development and youth development to create PGE Project Zero. Now we're working in partnership with our young adults, our youth, and our community-based organizations to empower the next generation to create cleaner, greener, more equitable communities through clean energy education, through climate education, through workforce development in the green sector, and through what I like to call a curation of environmental stewardship projects in the region. We all realize that, as I said in the beginning, it takes all of us coming together and working together. And that's why in the education space, it is so crucial that we have leadership like Colt Gill and like the Oregon Department of Education, who brings community input to the table on behalf of our students. As I serve on the State Board of Education, I am constantly reminded that our role as an industry partner, a business partner, is to make sure that the information that our teachers and our principals, our school districts have is up to date on what the skills are that are needed for our future workers or future coworkers really to have. But it's also important that we are supporting what is happening in the classroom just for learning's sake, not just for workforce development, because we recognize that part of our role is to create lifelong learners. The world is fast changing. Careers are not the same as they would have been 5 years ago. We know that there's more automation coming down the pipe, and that for our students, we need to have them be more human to compete with the automation. We also know that they need to be really good at math. And so as a STEM company, Portland General Electric has long supported mathematical training, engineering, technology, and now science in the form of climate science. It's all very important. But we've also been longstanding partners and supporters of arts learning because we believe that creative expression is the road to problem solving, to critical thinking skills, to teamwork, but also to the most important thing, which is the students have a sense of personal efficacy. They know who they are, they know how to be nimble learners, and they know how to navigate their future beyond school, beyond in the post-secondary space, whether it be training, whether it be college, university, whether it be going straight into the workforce. And so that's why Portland General Electric is really proud and happy today to be supporters of this forum around conversations in the education space. It's why I serve on the Oregon State Board of Education. It's why I'm honored to introduce to you today Colt Gill. He was appointed by the governor as Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction, and as such serves as the Director of the Oregon Department of Education. Once he was appointed by Governor Brown, he was confirmed by the Senate on February 12th, 2018. He served previously as Oregon's first Education Innovation Officer, a very important role. In this position, he focused on improving graduation outcomes by working with local communities, school districts, researchers, students, and other stakeholders to identify effective practices across the P20 continuum and make recommendations to the governor, state agencies, and the legislature regarding policies, budget priorities, and supports needed to increase the number of students who graduate prepared for their next steps in the workplace or in college. He has been an Oregon educator since 1989. He is an adjunct professor at the University of Oregon and has served on a number of boards and commissions relating to education and children's health and wellness initiatives. Please help me welcome our distinguished keynote speaker, Colt Gill, Director of the Oregon Department of Education and Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Great. Thank you for that, this opportunity. That was kind of exciting to see Kimberly Howard do the introduction. I didn't know that was going to happen. She's one of my many bosses. And her name changed just a week ago, so she just got married over Labor Day weekend. So that was kind of exciting to see her out and about. I also just wanted to thank you all for this opportunity. Superintendent Christy Perry first called me about this opportunity, and I was both excited, and I'll talk about why that is, but also a little bit intimidated because I'm sure that Christy has spoken to this group before, and our careers have sort of paralleled in the state of Oregon as educators, and hers is one that I've watched closely, and her leadership is one that I try to emulate. Long before she was Oregon Superintendent of the Year, we have interacted, and I've been able to follow her career. So I really appreciate the work that she's done. And so much, frankly, of what Kimberly had talked about, Christy has accomplished in Salem-Keizer Public Schools with increasing graduation outcomes and focusing on STEM education and CTE. So many great things happening in one of our state's largest school districts. And we're seeing the outcomes with our students, and it's really powerful and beautiful to watch. I'm also excited to be here because there isn't a time that's more important than now to make sure that we're communicating as frequently and as clearly as we possibly can about what school is going to be like. And it provides one more opportunity to be really transparent and try to answer folks' questions about what's happening in our schools. I am going to get into how schools will operate this year. I'm going to try to get there pretty quickly so that we can end on time this afternoon. But first, I do want to talk a little bit about the larger context, larger than COVID-19 and its impacts, I think. I need to talk about how Oregon has changed over the last couple of decades and why that really necessitates the kind of change that you see in Salem-Keizer Public Schools, and even in the ways that we deal with COVID-19. So beyond the kinds of offerings that are now available to our students and the way that our teachers and educators and counselors are connecting with students, we really need to take a look at who our students are today. So the first thing I want to do is go backwards a little bit. There we go. Okay, thank you. So again, going backwards, I'm going to go back a few decades. I'm not going to name how many because this is actually my second grade class. So I'll let you make a guess, but you can tell from those stylish clothes maybe kind of the era and the haircuts that we had. So this was my second grade class, like I said, and this was pretty reflective of second grade classes in Oregon in that decade across the state of Oregon. You can tell that it's pretty small, pretty white. Today, if this class, so this was Springfield, Oregon. I'm going to tell you what this class might look like if it were in Salem, Oregon today. First, there would be more students. So our class sizes have grown pretty significantly. We're asking a lot of our educators. A majority of these students would be students of color, about 54%, maybe even more in second grade in Salem. At least 70% of these students would be receiving free and reduced priced meals. And in some elementary schools in Salem, 100% of the students do. About 17% of these students would experience a disability of some kind. that makes learning a greater challenge for them. About a third of them would be emerging bilingual students, so meaning that they speak a different language at home than English that they're speaking at school. And they come to Salem Keizer Public Schools speaking 90 different languages. About 14% of these students would be highly mobile students, so meaning they're moving more than one time a year from school to school and connecting with a new set of peers and a new teacher. About 20% of them, so 1 in every 5 in that picture, would be chronically absent from school. So missing a significant part of the school year and their learning and their connection with their teacher. You know, some would have parents who are separated, of course. Some may be hungry or neglected. Some will have parents that are incarcerated and be living through those challenges. Some may have severe drug or alcohol abuse in their homes. Some may be part of a community of discounted peoples or peoples who are pushed aside in their own neighborhoods or discriminated against, and that may have been going on for generations. Some may be witnessing or experiencing violence in their homes, and some of these students would have no home to go home to at all. So in Salem Keizer, I'm going to go back to the 1920 school year because last school year was a little bit different. About 3% of the students in Salem Keizer Public Schools experienced houselessness. So that's a little over 1,000 children in our community here. So it looks a lot different than that picture from the 70s, I'll say 70s. This is the statewide view of Oregon Public Schools today. So statewide, we're about 40% students of color, about 60% of our students identify as white. And a little bit fewer identify as English language learners or emerging bilingual students, 18%. So a little bit different than the picture in Salem. A little bit fewer experience learning disabilities. And yet you're operating in a district or living in a district that is doing amazing work for all the students as they come to the district. That chart on the bottom is the one that I think is really important. You can see that our diversity has grown rapidly just over the last few decades. So the picture I showed you, at that time in Oregon, about 4% of our students were students of color, and today it's 40%. That means that our schools need to change. They need to think differently about the way that we serve our students. That's challenging to do because most of the people who work in our schools look like me. So white, male, and not necessarily attuned to all the needs of all of the students who go to our schools. I went to our schools here in Oregon, but I'm a different generation, a different population than attend our schools today. And this matters because we're not quite getting it. Last year, the suspension expulsion rate, this is last year of full-time in-person instruction. The suspension and expulsion rate for our Black or African American boys was 7.4% in kindergarten. So if you haven't seen a kindergartner for a while, they are little. 5 years old. They come up to about your knee or your thigh, and they have a lot of energy. And sometimes that energy ends up with this happening. And it can't happen. We can't be denying our kids education. 5.8% were the number of students reported having one or more suspensions or expulsions in that last year of full-time in-person instruction in total. For our American Indian, Alaska Native students, it was double that, about 10.5%. And for the whole Black African American student body, it was 11%. This is on the system, so this is not on those students. Those students came to school just like every other student, ready to learn, ready to be a part of a community, but our system was not ready to serve them. If our students aren't in school, then they can't succeed in school. Our students need to be in schools that are welcoming, safe, inclusive spaces for all students in the community, all staff members in that school, and all the families in that community. Because our assumptions about what kids can and can't do are oftentimes wrong. So this says students who exited English language learner programs before they graduate from before high school graduate at nearly 4 percentage points higher than the statewide average. So this is our kids who come into our schools speaking a different language other than English, and they learn English in the school system, then they go to high school and they graduate higher than the state average and 3 percentage points higher than native English speakers. They're kids who grew up speaking the language that the school is teaching in. What this tells us is that diversity, and in this case bilingualism, matters regardless of your first language. So diversity can be a driver of achievement. I think that that's true in business. It's also true in schools and education. So at the Department of Education and in our statewide system, we are trying to make big shifts to think carefully about equity and how we ensure that our schools are welcoming and inclusive for everyone who comes to them. They are the schools that belong to our children today. So at the Department of Education, we have an equity strategic plan. This has evolved over time from an equity lens that was developed about 10 years ago to an equity stance that we brought in when I came into the department 4 years ago, and then to what we have today is a distributed equity strategic plan that's inclusive of an equity, racial equity, and anti-racist approach, an equity decision tool that we use when we make important decisions across our agency, and an equity impact analysis that our state board uses when we put policy in front of them. I'm not going to go over everything on these slides. I'm happy to share these with the chamber if they want to share them out. I just want to touch on the first 2 or 3 of these. Within the agency, we have broadened our leadership diversity and trying to flatten our hierarchy so that people with ideas on how to best serve our students, their voices can be heard within our system. Our leadership at the cabinet level, the people who make the most critical decisions at the Oregon Department of Education, now match the diversity of Oregon's student body. We have 44% of our leadership are people of color. And I think that's really critical to the kind of decisions that we make. We also, in the last couple of years, established the Office of Indian Education that serves students in the 9 tribes that exist within the boundaries of the state of Oregon. There are many statewide efforts as well. These are sometimes initiated through the agency, sometimes through advocates, sometimes through the legislature. But in the area of standards and curriculum, Oregon has one of the first in the nation statewide required curricula. It's the only statewide required curriculum in Oregon as well. All the other curriculum is decided at the local school district level. But it is on tribal history, shared history. So it's a history of Oregon's 9 tribes, developed by the tribes themselves and taught in our schools. We also are the first state in the nation to have K-12 ethnic studies standards. There are many states that are developing standards. Ours are the only ones that span kindergarten through 12th grade and normalize the people who live in our state so that our students see them in their textbooks and the same people that they're interacting with in their classrooms. We also introduced focal student groups to the Student Success Act, so a new funding initiative to support students of color, students who experience disability, students who are emerging bilinguals, and students who navigate poverty or foster care to ensure that they're getting the support that they need. Part of that happens by listening to those students and their families and communities, and we do that by all those various student success plans that you see. Those are all affinity groups, where people who belong to those communities come together and they name what needs to change in our schools to better support the students who have been underserved by our system. And then the far left one is the civil rights column. Here we work on issues to ensure that all of our students are actually welcome in our schools and are served by our schools. So we have the Every Student Belongs. What was a rule is now a law in the state of Oregon that ensures when students face discrimination in our system, that there's an approach that all the schools have to address that. It also bans certain hate symbols from our schools so that all students can feel welcome in those spaces. I'm going to move past this, but there was legislation passed this last session in 2021 that will make a real difference to making sure our students are heard and seen in our schools. But I'm going to jump into what the school year will look like in terms of COVID-19. The COVID-19 threat is very real, especially now with the Delta variant coming through the state of Oregon. So I always start this with a little bit of data, so 3 quick data slides, and then I'll talk about what we're doing to offset this. This is our Epi Curve in Oregon. So this starts from the beginning of the pandemic, since it was first discovered here in the state of Oregon in February and early March. And you can see the different surges or waves of COVID-19 that we've experienced. That biggest one that we always look to was that one that happened over the holiday season, November to through the end of January. That was our big surge that we talked about in Oregon for a long time. And you can see how the Delta surge on the far right there has now eclipsed it significantly. What's challenging about the Delta surge is not only how contagious it is, especially for those that are unvaccinated, but how it impacts them and how it impacts our system. So this is our hospital curve. So you can see the same surges. That top line is the number of patients we have in the hospital right now, and you can see that we're sort of maybe hitting the peak of the Delta surge in Oregon. We're hopeful that that's true and that it holds true through Labor Day weekend gatherings and those kinds of things. The next one down is the ICU beds that are used in the state of Oregon, and the next one of that is people who are on ventilators in Oregon. What we also know, related to my earlier comments, is that there are disparities in the way that COVID-19 impacts our students. So this shows the cases per 100,000 based on ethnicity and race in pediatric cases, so children 17 and younger. So what it shows is that if you are Black, Pacific Islander, or Latino in the state of Oregon, you're at far greater risk of getting COVID-19 and having it impact you in your life, even as a child. So as we think about school this year, we have a few values that we hold tight to. Our priority is to implement the protocols that are needed to safely, first, and reliably, so meaning day after day, hold school in person each school day for all of our students throughout the entire school year. That's the North Star that Governor Brown has set for us. We've seen this steep increase in COVID-19 cases related to the Delta variant. We also know that the Delta variant impacts mostly unvaccinated people and impacts them most severely. The population in our schools is mostly unvaccinated. So kids 12 and under are not eligible for vaccine. Kids 13 and up, we have about a 50% vaccination rate in Oregon. So we're in one of the more challenging spaces to make sure that we're keeping our students safe. In Oregon, school attendance is compulsory. Kids are required to go to school in some way. And school is also a congregate setting where we're all in a tight space, much tighter than this one. You've seen classrooms and how far desks are from one another. What we do know, though, is that what we did in the spring worked, and what we did in the spring that is happening in other states and other countries is still working with the Delta variant. So when we can layer a number of protocols, and I'll go through those in a minute here, together, we're keeping COVID-19 from moving from one person to another in the school setting. It's very challenging outside the school setting, and by that I mean just immediately outside. So think after school, when kids are getting together, carpools, sleepovers, sporting events, all of those kinds of things are more challenging spaces to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We have a lot of information for our schools, so much that it is frankly hard for them to manage to keep up with. and it changes frequently. And we want it to change frequently because we learn more about COVID-19 and the different variants every day. And so we don't want to be static because we don't want to actually be wearing our masks forever either. So when it's safe enough to take them off, we want to find that space and make sure that we can do that. This framework puts most of the responsibility for layering these mitigation efforts on the local school district and on the local schools. And it will look a little bit different from school to school. And some of that will be local decisions, but some of that also has to do with the facility and the number of students that they serve and the kind of spaces that they have. So they have to look at different ways to put in mitigation efforts based on that, the space that they're working in. We have asked them as they're making local decisions to put equity first. So to think really clearly about the community that they serve and how they've been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We've provided them with some decision tools to include that community in the decision making. We've asked them to be attentive to the layers of health and safety protections because no one thing alone will prevent the spread. And again, because they have the opportunity to have quite a bit of flexibility, we've asked them to focus on making sure their community, their students, their staff know what the rules are in their school. There are a couple of things that we do at a statewide level. So we do have a statewide mask requirement. This one apparently is going to go one by one. I'm going to flip through these really quickly here. The statewide mask requirement is in alignment with what the CDC is asking schools to do. So they're asking everyone in that environment, regardless of whether they're vaccinated or not, to wear a mask to prevent COVID-19 from spreading to from one person to another. We need that in Oregon because of the data that I showed you. We're hopeful that at some point we can pull that rule away and we can drop our masks safely. Oregon's not alone in that requirement. Washington, California, Arkansas, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Kentucky, Louisiana, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Illinois, Rhode Island, Virginia, Washington, D.C. all have that, and many others are starting to implement that statewide rule. The Oregon Pediatric Society and American Academy of Pediatrics and the Oregon Academy of Family Physicians had over 400 Oregon physicians write to the governor and to the Department of Education asking us to implement this rule to ensure that our kids could continue to go to school. So it's not only to keep them safe, but it's to make sure that they get to go to school day after day and they aren't caught up in a quarantine and sent home. When we say layered protections, this is what I mean. So this can look kind of iffy because Swiss cheese, it's full of holes, right? But part of what that represents is that no one mitigation effort is enough, and the virus will get through one. But if you keep layering them up, it makes it too hard to find the pathway to the other person. So this shows the virus on the left and the person on the right. And if you have symptom screening in place, so our teachers are watching out for when kids have symptoms of COVID-19. You have face coverings, physical distancing, cohorting students, so not very many are impacted when there is an outbreak. Hand washing, paying attention to the ventilation systems, making sure they're open to outside air. All of those kinds of things can help prevent the spread from one person to another. We've also have tools for folks at home so that they can think really clearly and simply about what they can do to help keep their family and their child safe. So this is 5 really quick tips for households that have students. First one is make a plan to get people who are eligible vaccinated. Even if you're not worried about yourself, you should be worried about those that you live with, your children, and especially elder household members. Mask up in public, including carpools on the way to school. Excuse me. Limit your gatherings with people outside your household, and when you do gather, make sure it's outside and you're able to keep physical distance. And then, in case your child does need to be quarantined because they're exposed to COVID-19, and this could be on the sports field, it could be in a classroom, it could be at the grocery store, make sure that you have a plan for how to take care of them. And I think the last thing I want to share, and then probably need to wrap it up, right? Am I over time to wrap? Is it okay? All right, I just want to make sure. There's a 5-minute video we can have people watch at home, or I can jump into questions. That's fine, yeah. Sure. Okay, let's, I will skip past the video. What I will say is this video is from a Salem Kaiser Public Schools high school. It's got the voice of students. If we listen to our kids, they will tell us about the pathway through this. And they are a big part of some of the work that we've done at the department to reframe how our students and how our faculty and how the media think about what's happened during the pandemic. So we hear people talk about learning loss. Instead, we are talking about addressing unfinished learning and recognizing all the learning that our kids did complete as they were at home, and thinking about how to accelerate their needs and provide care and connection for each of our students.
We have today declared that the coronavirus presents a public health emergency in the United States.
After 23 years at North, working with students, I have to address the concerns that are being expressed by so many about the deficits the kids will demonstrate when they finally return to school.
It's concerning.
It's concerning.
It's concerning.
It's concerning that this is what concerns some in the face of a pandemic affecting millions around our country and world.
It speaks to one of my biggest fears.
It speaks to one of my biggest fears
for the children when they return. Our determination to catch them up. I fear that we will lose who they are and what they have learned during this unprecedented time.
What on earth are we trying to catch them up on?
The scope and sequence no longer apply.
The old assessments are no longer valid.
The plans have been interrupted.
We shouldn't forget that the scope and sequence, standards, and assessments were established by people, not ordained by God.
They simply do not apply.
They simply do not apply.
They simply do not apply.
When we return to school, we will return with a new history.
Al regresar a la escuela, regresaremos con una nueva historia. Khi chúng mình trở lại trường học, mình sẽ do trường học thành một lịch sử mới.
When we return to school, we will have returned with a new history.
And we will need to help them make sense of it.
When we return to school, we need you to listen to us.
Khi chúng mình trở lại trường học, mình cần bạn để nghe lắng để nghe mấy cái chỗ chuyện của mình để được giải.
Ike waduin ngeri sukun aku botse popo auseri ngeriken mut ngeriken ay papasaki. Let our stories be told.
Dejarnos contar nuestra historia.
Let our stories be told. We have endured. Hemos superado.
We've endured.
Nosotros hemos tenido que superar.
We have endured a year that has no parallel in our times.
There's no assessment that applies to who we are or what we have learned.
Our brains did not go into hibernation during this year. They may not have been focused on traditional school material, but they didn't stop either.
Our brains have been focused on where our next meal is coming from, or how to care for our younger siblings, or how to deal with the loss of a loved one.
We need you.
Necesitamos de ustedes.
We need you.
They need us.
They need us to
welcome us back and help us write that history.
We need to surrender the artificial constructs and traditional notions of school as we knew it and greet students where they are, not where we think they should be.
Greet them with art supplies and writing materials.
And theater and dance and so many other opportunities to help them express what has happened in their lives during this horrific year.
Greet us with stories and books that will help us make sense of an upside-down world.
We missed you.
They did not miss the test prep.
And what boys do.
We didn't miss the worksheets.
Los extrañamos.
They didn't miss the homework.
We missed you.
Resist the pressure from whatever powers that be who are in a hurry to fix kids and make up for lost time. The time, it was not lost. It was invested in surviving an historic event in their lives, in our lives.
The children do not need to be fixed.
Nuestros hijos no necesitan reparación.
The children do not need to be fixed.
Nada nos ha destruido.
Chúng con không có vi phạm bất kỳ.
Nada nos ha destruido.
Nada nos ha destruido.
Neresitor sekun o buera o kisisek kukukukis premi posible. Nada nos ha destruido.
We are not broken.
They need to be heard.
Ellos necesitan ser escuchados.
They need to be heard.
Necesitamos escucharlos.
They need to be heard.
We need to be heard.
They need to be given as many tools as we can provide to nurture resilience and help them prepare and adjust for a post-pandemic world.
Being a teacher is an essential connection between what is and what can be.
Our kids have so much to share about the world they live in, and we can help them make sense of what, for all of us, has been unimaginable.
Ha sido no imaginable.
Has been unimaginable.
Unimaginable.
This will help them
And us achieve a lot more that can be measured
By any assessment ever devised.
Tenemos una tradición de permanecer unidos en tiempos difíciles porque somos una comunidad resiliente y unida como familia para la excelencia académica, pero aún más importante es nuestro compromiso de cuidarnos el uno al otro.
We have a tradition of coming together in times of need. Because our community is resilient, united as a Viking family in the excellence of not only our academics, but in our commitment to one another.
This is the true north.
Esta es la verdadera norma.
This is the true north.
This is the true north.
So that video is about 5 minutes long. I hope that you do watch it, and what I'll do is stop now and answer a few questions.
We have time for a couple, one or two questions? Raise your hand and we can bring a mic over. No?
I stunned you in your
You
silence.
did.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, go.
I was going to say, they want to see the video.
Yes, it is a great video.
Thank you for your time to come speak with us today. What do you tell educators, I'm kind of going back to your first topic, what do you tell educators that might be just almost exasperated at this point, where they have to be almost the parents in the classroom, they have to be maybe a social worker, and they're not even getting a chance to educate anymore?
Yeah, definitely our jobs have changed some. My partner, my wife, is still an educator. She works in a public school, and we have these conversations all the time. What they recognize, though, is that if we can't get the students all the services they need, if we can't make sure that they're comfortable coming into our space at school, then there is no learning that's going to happen. So we need to continue to work on providing all of those supports. They shouldn't all have to come from the teacher in the classroom. Oregon has one of the lowest counselor-to-student ratios in the country. So our counselors are in Oregon, typically are in school districts where they're serving over 1,000 students. And what the ratio is suggested to be is about 240 students. So we need more school counselors. Our school nurse ratio, and at a time like this when we need school nurses more than ever, looks the same. There's been legislation passed that has named that, but not supported it with investment. So school counselors, school nurses, those are the pathways to make sure that all of our students, when they enter the school, really are ready to learn and be in that classroom. Until then, all of us, from the principal to the counselor to the classroom teacher, need to support the child all the way around so that they can learn. There's one over here.
I'm curious what the plan is to address learning loss and catching kids up.
Yeah, great question. So that is what our teachers are anxious to do. I'm going to name that. They want to get back to the way things were prior to the pandemic and move towards accelerating our students' lost academic learning. What we are asking them to do first, though, to make sure that our students are really ready for that, is to connect with them. During these first weeks of school, we don't see this as the right time to jump right into academic assessments. and to make plans for what the students need academically. What we do think it's first time for is to rebuild that relationship, make sure that each of the students feels comfortable at school, and make sure that they have a place where they can decompress some and talk about what they experienced or show through art what they experienced over this last year. Once that's complete, then our teachers will do what they do best. They will jump right back into the academics. It matters to them that their students, if they are in middle school, that their students are ready to succeed in algebra in high school. That's what they're going to focus on. If they're a fourth grade teacher, they're going to want to make sure every one of their students is ready for fifth grade the next year. And they know that they're starting from an academic deficit in many ways. And we can talk to educators in our schools and principals and superintendents at local districts about how they plan to address that. Many of our school districts have gone through exercises where they're going through all of Oregon's standards, and they're naming the key standards that students must be able to accomplish to be ready for success in the next grade level, and they're focusing on those this school year so that they can accelerate students so that they're ready to take deeper learning.
Thank you again, Director Gill. Now we have a few, thank you here for your leadership during this incredible, challenging time for the educators across the state. Really appreciate it. And now video will be put up on the Chamber's website for you to watch. We stand in encouragement for Superintendent Christy Perry. She is recognized as the best superintendent in Oregon, and we are proud to have her serving as a strong and optimistic leader with the Salem Kaiser School District. Thank you again, Past President Brent DeHart, for your lovely voice and vision. Mark and Tiffany, your impact in Salem is profound, and I couldn't think of a better recipient for the Spirit of Salem Awards than both of you. We really do recognize your impact and salute you both. Thank you again. Thank you for the gracious support of today's forum sponsor series, sponsors PGE. We further recognize the efforts of Wendy Velez, Local Government Affairs Manager at PGE, who sits on our Salem Chamber Board of Directors and our Executive Committee. A few announcements. We have some exciting up-and-coming things. We have a big one next Monday as we tee off for the annual Mclaren Classic Golf Tournament presented by Columbia Bank. It is a sellout. A field of 240 golfers will compete at Illahee Country Club. Thanks to our sponsors and participants for their support. The weather looks promising. A little rain this weekend, so hopefully that will be it. We want to make sure that we have great attendance at the Salem Chamber Businesswoman Group that meets on September 21st at Ross West Salem for their monthly luncheon, featuring our own Cara Compensano of KC Creative, and you can register at thesalemchamber.org. And finally, we look forward to seeing all of you back here at the Salem Convention Center for October's special forum luncheon, the SAIF Ag Harvest Celebration, sponsored by KeyBank. This will be a special 2-hour forum meeting on Monday, October 18th, featuring a keynote speaker, Oregon Farm Bureau President Barb Iverson. Select tickets remain available at salemchamber.org or by calling the Salem Chamber office. And a special thank you to our partners at Allied Video Productions for assisting us in the best world-class event productions. Brian Hart and the team at Allied Video do wonderful work to showcase excellence in our forum luncheons. Follow their work at alliedvideo.com. And again, thank you to our Salem Chamber ambassadors for their work welcoming attendees to all our chamber functions. You make walking in the door fun and enjoyable. And last, without our Salem Chamber staff, what a great team. It's been wonderful, and they bring relevance and impact programming to the Salem business community. And with that, we'll see you all next month.